And today, we passed this continuing resolution in the United States House of Free Stuff that rack up another $1 trillion of debt, continuing to fund agencies to carry out their tyrannical activities, in particular, to carry out vaccine mandates on the American people that are getting slapped down one by one by courts across this country. Because, of course, the President of the United States doesn't have the authority or the power to mandate that an American citizen go into a doctor's office and get a needle jabbed in their arm. He doesn't have that power. And the United States House of Free Stuff here, allegedly representing the people, is supposed to actually care enough about representing those people to stand here as a bulwark holding the line against an authoritarian president of the United States, against a president carrying out executive overreach. That's what we see happening. He's being slapped down left and right by the courts. Now look, I don't believe in wearing a partisan hat when we're talking about standing up for the Constitution, standing up for Article I branch of the federal government. I introduced legislation when the previous president, Republican, President Trump, was in office, called the Article I Act, to take away powers from the president with respect to emergency powers being used. I did so, frankly, in the wake of the use of dollars for border fencing and wall construction, which I supported, which was important, which was a response to an emergency, and by the way, was working. But it was important for us to start laying out a foundation for protecting Article I, the United States Congress. And today, we passed a continuing resolution that we sent over to the United States Senate, and we never had a vote in this body about the vaccine mandates that are being slapped down in courts across this country for being unlawful, unconstitutional, tyrannical overreach by the executive branch of the United States. Never in our history have we had federal mandates applying across the country to the American citizens that they must be vaccinated. They have been local decisions, local schools, local counties, in states, in specific responses to highly communicable diseases that they knew might be communicable and be pulled back by a vaccine. And after many years of study, with massive numbers of exemptions and protections for individual liberty and choice, that is the history of how we have handled it in a federalist 50-state republic. Not a decision by a president, or frankly, probably more likely the president's advisors, that the American people must be vaccinated, that a small business or a business of any size must vaccinate their employees. People act like, well, it's no big deal. I want to direct my remarks here to my Republican colleagues. My Republican colleagues who today were perfectly happy to vote no on this CR. Yes, I'll go home and I'll give a speech. I voted no on this CR. I voted no because this continuing resolution had these terrible provisions in it. And yes, this continuing resolution had vaccine mandate funding, funding the Department of Labor and funding OSHA and funding the Department of Defense to carry out these mandates. I voted no, don't you know? So what? Who cares if you voted no? You vote no and you give a speech, pat yourself on the back. Good for you. Did you do anything to go stand with any of the senators who had a chance to actually do something with this? With the senators over there right now having a debate and trying to force a vote on an amendment to prevent the tyrannical application of vaccine mandates? Did my colleagues say, let's go round up and go over and stand alongside Mike Lee? Or did they hide behind the Article III judiciary? Did they hide behind the courts and say, well, let's let the courts sort it out? No, that's exactly what they did. Secure the blessings of liberty and the Constitution indeed by the supposed primary branch of government. And these have real consequences for real Americans, real lives. Hospitals in Massachusetts are already limiting elective procedures due to a critical staffing shortage. Do we care? Are we concerned about that? The New York governor issued an executive order that postponed elective surgeries in order to deal with the staffing shortage. Do we care? Are we concerned? The largest children's hospital in Wisconsin is struggling to treat victims of the BLM extremist who rammed his car through the Waukesha Christmas parade. Do we care? Dear friend of mine, suffering from multiple sclerosis, teaching at a university. She's being told she may not be able to continue teaching because she believes, in consultation with her doctor, that it is in her best interest not to be vaccinated at this time. She should have the right and the ability to choose to do that for her and her family and her interest without coercion from an overextended federal government under an unlawful and unconstitutional mandate by the President of the United States. And this body, the Congress of the United States, should do its Article 1 job and stand up in defense of her and every other American who is facing losing their job at Thanksgiving and Christmas, or being discharged from the military of the United States that they proudly serve because they believe in their interest, in their own personal safety, their own health interest, that they should be the one to choose, not a faraway president. We structured this government specifically not to do this. We structured this government with federalism and separation of powers specifically to avoid having a king. That man on the painting over on this wall in this House chamber, the first president of the United States, turned down being a king, turned down the monarchy, turned down a third term because the founders knew why that mattered. The founders knew why separating powers and limiting powers mattered because they saw and foresaw exactly what we're seeing today in this country and across the world. Where in Austria and Germany and Australia and places around the world, we see mandates forcing people to be in their homes and not go out and not engage in society because they're not vaccinated. It's absurd. This country is built on a bedrock of liberty and protecting liberty and securing the blessings of liberty. And this president is stepping on it, and the United States Congress, members of both parties, are MIA, missing in action, unwilling to stand up in defense of liberty while patting themselves on the back for voting no on a continuing resolution and then kicking it over to the Senate for one man to stand on the floor of the United States Senate, Senator Mike Lee, daring to say we should have a vote on an amendment that says we shouldn't have the vaccine mandates. God bless Mike Lee for doing that. I hope he holds to his guns. And no, I'm not going to freak out or panic if Saturday at 12:05 in the morning rolls around and, oh no, we haven't gotten that funding done. That funding, by the way, that's racking up, as I said before, another $1 trillion of debt. The United States House of free stuff. Father called me up in tears because his 13-year Army veteran son is likely going to be discharged because he believes, based on his conversation with his doctors, that it is not in his interest to get the vaccination. Millions of Americans who know they have natural immunity, who have been ignored, who have been absolutely ignored because the leaders of our national health organizations and agencies aren't actually focusing on natural immunity. We haven't had a study on natural immunity of any consequence out of our leaders. We've had to rely on Israel and the UK and other places and private entities. But all of these millions of Americans who have natural immunity are being told, sorry, you must still go get a needle stuck in your arm in order to have a job. In what world is this the land of the free? It is not. And in what world are the people in this chamber who are supposed to represent the people of the United States how are they doing their job in the Article 1 branch of our federal government if they're not standing up for those people? Those people who are going about their life, making a decision in their interest. And by the way, as if this matters to me a whole lot, that even the experts, so-called, heading up our national health agencies and organizations, acknowledge that if you're vaccinated, you still spread the dadgum virus. It literally makes no sense. We're killing people. We're restraining and restricting therapeutics that can actually help people. We belittle people who are working in consultation with doctors to find ways to solve the problem if they happen to get the virus, whether they've been vaccinated or not, by the way. And we're mandating people get the vaccination irrespective of whether they had the virus and have natural immunity. And for months I've been hearing about, oh, they laugh off natural immunity. And now suddenly you start to hear, oh, bow down to the altar of all things Dr. Fauci, that he suddenly said, oh, yeah, natural immunity, that's kind of a real thing. No kidding. What world do you live in? The world of Washingtonian magazine and propping your feet up with sunglasses and getting cool pictures and throwing baseball games out of game? I had a young woman who's 9 months pregnant. Remember all the frontline workers everybody was celebrating a year ago? She's one of them. She's a nurse. I saw all these people standing up at games, people in this chamber going around praising the frontline workers. Well, good. We should have been praising the frontline workers who were out there in an unknown virus showing up and helping those who are sick. But suddenly now, if you're one of those frontline workers and for your own health and well-being, you decide you don't believe you should be vaccinated, you might have natural immunity, maybe you've got an underlying condition, and you choose not to, then this young lady, a Texan who's 9 months pregnant, is losing her job in direct response to the president's unlawful and unconstitutional mandates.